Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of history. History is more than just a collection of dates and events. It is the narrative of humanity's journey through time. It shapes our understanding of the present and informs our vision of the future. However, the study of history is not without its complexities. As we explore various historical perspectives, we must acknowledge that personal biases, prejudices, and cultural contexts often influence how history is recorded and interpreted. In this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with a distinguished history scholar working as assistant professor in history at Government Degree College, Tral, Mr. Tahir Ahmad Naiku, young and dynamic scholar who will shed light on nuance of historical scholarship, the impact of individual perspectives, and the importance of critical thinking in understanding our past. Join us as we navigate through the intricate tapestry of history, examining how it reflects not only the events that have occurred, but also the diverse viewpoints that shape our interpretation of those events. And at the end, we request all of you to please comment, like, and share, and subscribe our YouTube channel by the name of Educational Cosmos. Thank you very much. They say that history is not the story of kings and kingdoms. If it is so, then India has no history at all. To know about history, we are here at Degree College, Tral, with Professor Tahir Ahmad Naiku, Assistant Professor Tahir Ahmad Naiku, to discuss about various modes and modalities of history. So we will start what different authors and scholars have said about history. E.H. Carr, a renowned name in this field, in his book What is History, Carr argues that history is not just a collection of facts, but involves interpretation and the historian's perspective. He asserts that historians shape history through the questions as they ask and the narrative they construct. From it, I remember what Nietzsche once said, that there's no absolute truth, there are only interpretations. One more scholar, Michael Foucault, says that Foucault's perspective on history challenges traditional narratives, focusing instead of power dynamics and social constructs. He argues that history is intertwined with the past present, that our understanding of the past is influenced by the contemporary context. Now, without any quotations from authors or scholars, we will directly listen from the horse's mouth with our very first question: defining history. Sir, how do you define history, and what do you believe is its primary purpose? In your view, is history more of a science or an art? And if that, why?
Thank you, sir, for being a part of this program, which is titled as Educational Cosmos. It is really a privilege for me. So far as question history is concerned, we have to go into the little bit genesis of how this history came into being, and we have to go back to the old Greek, where it was started by Herodotus and his disciple Thucydides. What inspired this Herodotus to take up the task of writing history? He was inspired from the Greco-Prussian Wars, and he wanted to find that what is the cause why the two states are always fighting with each other, and ultimately he wrote that in history, and this is how Genesis began. But earlier on, all these subjects, they were to be studied under one head, that was history, that was philosophy, and history was simply one of the branches. Later, with the passage of time, as knowledge disseminated, and history emerged as one of the subjects or one of the branches which began to study humans from, we may say, from the inception or from the human existence. And to me, history is simply understanding of the past. We can never say it is search or inquiry or to find the truth, because we will never be able to find the truth, truth is always, it is a relative, it is never absolute.
It's relative, yes.
It is relative, it can't be absolute truth. Why so? Because whenever we talk about past, we see past through the prism of the present. And keeping in view, we are to be shaped by environment, different factors which contribute towards our psyche, and we use that intelligence or that perspective to understand past. to understand history or past. So, to my understanding, or what I have presumed from history, it is simply understanding of the past.
Understanding of
Of
the
the
past.
past.
Okay. So, in continuation to what you said, Dr. Saab, is that what methods do historians use to research and interpret historical events? Even I can elaborate my question like this. I have heard that, and there are even live examples that people inculcating myths in history, that truth being distorted up to that extent where we cannot have a fine line or a line which can say that this is the distorted path and this is the real path. What have you to say about this?
Actually, historians use a number of methods so far as this history is concerned. As you rightly said, that one of the most important topics to be understood or to be taken in history is the mythical part.
Mythical
Myths
part.
are always there and they will be there. And we don't have any problems with myths and mythologies unless they trespass the domain of history. Because people try to incorporate the same in history and they try to fit it within the domain of timeline of history. And then the problem comes because they have to justify then those mythical parts. Because there is everything, it should be evident, there should be sources, primary sources, secondary sources, or we need a lot of information to incorporate those very mythical parts. But historians, they have a number of, like, they have thematic historical research, they have biographical research, they have this oral history. Oral history is one of the most important historical researches to be incorporated by a historian while studying history. Thereby, why oral history? Because oral history, it is simply right from the mouth of a person. But
Exactly.
there we have to, once again, we have to, there is a famous, as you already mentioned, E.H. Carr. He rightly said that study the historian before you begin to study the
history.
It is necessary. Why? Because you have to see what was the background, what is the background of the historian. Was he a court poet or he was writing outside the court?
In other words, we can say that even a historian's mind is influenced by his prior speculations or prejudices.
Exactly. And he can't escape. He can't escape from it because we see in our lives. Suppose, sir, you will better understand it like this. You are a man from physics. If we will discuss anything, but in your back thought of your mind, there will be always physics. You will try to apply. If the same will be happening, what will be the perspective from physics point of view? Because that is the
Actually, it envelops your whole psyche.
exactly the circumstances, the atmosphere in which we are brought up, it contributes a lot towards our understanding of the things. So same happens.
Then, how do we evaluate the reliability of historical sources?
Actually, here comes one of the important parts of history, that is scientific history. Because it is not simply narration of the facts or interpretation of the facts. The facts are like Carr rightly said, they are like a fish on the fishmonger's table. He cuts the fish into different sizes, then chooses the one, which one is going to be grilled, which one is going to be fried, and serves them accordingly.
Exactly.
But we may say students of history or scholars, they testify those very facts and they corroborate those facts from other disciplines. That is what comes to my mind. It is called as interdisciplinary approach. What is interdisciplinary approach? It is simply looking at things from other angles. Suppose we may say tomorrow a site will be excavated in somewhere in Kashmir, and some people will postulate that it is somehow 5,000 years ago. It is 5,000 years before us, the people were present. So it is simply a postulate. But once a professional, or we may say a person who is trained in history, he will go there and simply he will say, no, we can't say with authenticity that it belongs to that period unless it is to be proven or corroborated by other sources. Like we will go for carbon 14 dating.
Exactly, yes.
Or we will go to the contemporary sources. We will try to match the poetry with the poetry which we have already found somewhere else. Then we can ascertain its authenticity and we can fit it in the timeline.
So, what you say is that this is the mode to ensure the authenticity.
Exactly.
What are other parts of it?
other parts of ensuring authenticity.
How does it become scientific? That's what I mean to say. Is it simply because we go for radio 14 carbon dating, or there are some all other
No,
methods?
no, no. It is not only radio. It was simply one of the matlab, to corroborate my answer. There are other techniques. It is not only carbon 14
Because
dating.
that's actually aligned to find the age.
There are numismatics, which is the study of the coins. There is
Exactly.
epigraphy, that is the study of the inscriptions. And also we have the, if they had a well-developed script, then we have philology, that is the
Exactly.
language, study of the language. Once all these things will ascertain the fact that it belongs to this very period, or its authenticity is, or we may say sometimes foreign accounts come to our rescue. Suppose there is a traveler, he has somebody has written about it, he has visited Kashmir, at the same time he also mentions that. So these are the testing grounds on which we can prove the authenticity of
Exactly. So we are trying to create bridges to connect all those parameters.
Right.
That's very great. So can you provide example of how different interpretation of the same event can coexist in historical discourse?
Yes,
And it's a
exactly.
very interesting question.
Of course, actually, once this is indeed it is a very important question, and what comes to my mind is the most controversial question about this Kashmir. That is the origin of Kashmir from the lake,
Exactly,
which we commonly
yes.
call as Satisa. And we are certain that there was a lake because lake stream deposits testify it. Lake stream deposits are those deposits which we found on the mountains. We suppose we find some remains of fish or aquatic animals
Some
on
fossils.
fossils. So it is not possible that some fish or some aquatic
They
animals
would have climbed the top of a mountain.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it is clear indication that lake stream deposits suggested that there was a lake. Now to testify that, and then water was desiccated from this valley, and it turned out the original inhabitants which were residing on the upper parts of the valley, they, with the passage of time, as water desiccates, they became
Started moving to the plains.
plains, and valley became habitable. Now the question is, who desiccated the water from Kashmir? So there have been a lot of persons, or a lot of, we may say, scholars have written about it, and the most we may say valued book is Kalhana's Raj Tarangni. Kalhana's Raj Tarangni states that the water desiccation, it was done by that Kashyap Rishi. You would have also gone through the
Exactly,
story.
yes.
Kashyapa, he along with the Vishnu and Krishna, he desiccated the water, and there was a demon living inside Sati Sara, Jalod Baba. After a fierce battle, Jalod Baba was killed, and thereby they created a gorge near Baramulla, and water was desiccated. But it is a fantasy tale rather than it can't be scientifically proven.
Exactly.
What science says? Science says that the desiccation of water, which got desiccated through Baramulla Gorge, it was a geological event. And we have every evidence. Why so? Because Kashmir, it comes under zone 5, MBT zone 5. It is most active volcanic zone because we are residing on a boundary plate, that is Eurasian plate and Indian plate. And the best example or scientific explanation for this is that Himalayas are young-fold mountains which are still active. And we have seen earlier on the height of Mount Everest was written in textbooks as 8,848 meters. But nowadays it is written as 8,850 meters.
50 meters.
So there is an increase of 2
2
meters.
meters.
And why it is so? It is because of the seismic activity. That means seismic
A
activity.
continuous process which is going beneath.
And there was a gorge, because of some geological erosion, a gorge was created and water desiccated. But this, it's not only Kalhana. Some Muslim historians also write that it was during the Noah's delusion. The Kashmir also got desiccated. The Kashmir also became a lake. Then, during Solomon's time, the water was desiccated by two. He employed two supernatural creators or jinns to desiccate the water. One's name was Kashyap and another name was Mir, and the valley was named after them, Kashyap and Mir.
Exactly. There is one more narrative written by Aziz Kashmiri in his book Christ in Kashmir. He says that actually we are from Jewish origin, and story goes like
right.
that.
Exactly.
And the word Kashmir means like Syria, and we have got Hebrew origin.
Right.
That's altogether a different story. We are not going to discuss all these things here. So one more question is that how do power influence historians' narrative?
Marx has rightly said that historians cover the deeds of the rich. Why so? Because writing history and employing somebody to write history is not common man's job. Because
Exactly,
it
yes.
needs a lot of royal patronage.
Hmm.
Because why would somebody write history for someone? Because of course there is something we may say behind that. That is what we call as material gain. So he called that history of all hitherto human struggle is the history of class struggle. So class struggle. Once he says it is class struggle and it is all the history of upper class because role of common masses is not there, thereby saying that rich have always tried to cover their deeds whatsoever, whether they have done something good or whether they have done something bad, they try to color it, they try to give it a proper shape, and for that they need a writer or court official or a court poet. And that is why we have seen that all kings, great kings whosoever have come since the dawn of human civilization on this planet Earth, they have patronized great poets, great these historians to write their accounts. So partially it is true that they have done it because, but there are other ways to ascertain that.
So, how does this power then simply create a public opinion or a public perspective?
Actually, once people are in power, or we may say nowadays there is a thrust, one of the schools which aims to study history from the below. They are called as subaltern historians. They try to study history from the below. They say if we have to study history, it should be from the below. Why to start from the top? Because they say always historians have always neglected the role of common masses. Common masses, it is the common masses who always try to who always make kings or great kings always rule over common masses. Their role have been neglected. So they say history should be to be gathered from the below. But why people in power try to sabotage, or why they try to we may say use history for there were they had their personal agenda before behind that. And what was that personal agenda? They believed all the great kings, they believed that this power, it does not belong to all persons, or which means that they
To some selected ones.
associated divinity, the element of divinity. They say that king is a divine origin. Everybody cannot become king, but the selected ones. And who selects us? It is the God.
It's the
And
God.
they gave this divine element, and that is why people have to revere such
They call
kings,
them chosen people.
chosen people, and that is how they managed the affairs.
Okay. So, how do you see the role of history in contemporary society?
Role of history is very much important, and it why is it so? Because what we are, it is because of the actions, whatever, whether it is technological developments, whether it is material developments, or other developments which have been doing since the dawn of civilization, or since the dawn of, we may say, prehistoric man till date. Whatever achievements have been there, they are to be recorded in history, and we have to learn a lot from them so that we can make our future better. And that is one of the somebody has rightly said that history is to be written, history is to be read in order to make our future a better place to live.
Okay. Now,
So
do
we
you
have to take insights.
okay? Do you feel that a time will come when history, I cannot say like philosophy, but some part of philosophy will become irrelevant?
It will not become irrelevant, but I think once we were talking about the mythical part in history. So such things with the passage of time, I think they will lose their relevance. Why so? Because we see technological innovations are happening day in and day out. For I will quote an example. In one of the greatest civilizations in India was Indus Valley civilization.
Indus Valley civilization.
So, firstly, some 30, 40 years before, there was a view that the people, they were to be, the Indus Valley civilization, they were invaded by Aryans. And it was to be accepted as it is the cause of their decline. But with the passage of time, as technological developments took place, archaeological sources and other material remains, they suggest that no, it is not the plausible answer. Then they say the present trend says that there was climate change, there was ecological imbalance, there was shifting of the river course.
So there are so many other
So
causes.
many causes which resulted in the decline of the. So narratives change as technological and other
Advancements happen.
change. So these false beliefs and myths, with the passage of time, they will die.
Okay, okay.
Such
Last but personal question is, I can call it personal reflections. If you could change one widely accepted historical narrative, what would be that and why?
Actually, what my personal thinking is about this history, it is that we should never be selective. We should never be. We should always try to be objective rather than subjective. What we do, we always try to select. We are selective. For example, what I mean by this is that we quite often do value judgment. What is value judgment? What it is and what it ought to be. What it is, just keep it what it is. Never try to make it what it ought to be. Somebody has done something in past. Read it as it appears in the textbook. Why you have to do the analysis? You have to become that. The underlying idea was this. He had to do that. You should, whatever has historical events, they come, go. They should be read as they appear in the textbooks. We should not create controversy out of such things, that there are certain things which need to be.
But is it good to accept the things as they are written in the textbooks? There can even be a chance of fallacy in that.
Yes, there are chances, but I say, suppose there are persons who glamorize history. Suppose there is a director, he has to make a movie, a historical movie. If he will make a pure historical movie,
It's okay.
it is okay, and that will be a flop because he has to add glamour to it.
Fantasy elements to it.
Exactly. So while doing that, he distorts history.
History. And people accept these things as historical
And people
facts.
accept those missing links, what it is and what it ought to be, and the gap is to be filled by the director.
Exactly, yes.
And once he fills the director, he is creating problem. He tries to make dramatize things in a way.
But there's always a disclaimer for such movies that we don't rely on historical
people-
books. There's a part of entertainment to it. But people take it as directly comes from God's
Exactly.
mouth. That's very good. So inshallah, we'll be looking for one more episode with Dr. Tahir to know more about history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.